I've been dying to ask someone who was Irish who grew up in England this question. This sign that you sometimes see, I'm not even sure if it really existed. And the sentiment did, I'm sure, but this sign about no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. Did you ever see it? Did you ever speak to people who said they saw it, or what was the deal with it?
I think the jury's out, isn't it? So I was at the last year, there was an Irish in Britain at 50 exhibition, which started in London. It made its way to Dublin. It's gone international. It was an excellent exhibition, and I was one of the interviewees for it, an oral history project funded by the UK National Lottery. And when I went to see the exhibition at the Irish Cultural Centre in Hammersmith, you've got, a photo of that sign in the window, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. It's very hard to be convinced of provenance, though. You can take a photo of a net curtain with a sign in it. I think, for academic historians, that wouldn't be sufficient. And I think there's a lot of anecdote about its being there. The person who actually has the evidence, a photo from the 1950s with that in the window, has got a very good historical card to play when they choose to surface it. I, I don't know, and it is not known. I think it's become almost accepted now, some kind of truism that's there, but could we prove it to academic peer review standards? I don't know, but I think it's indicative of, look, immigrant communities in post-war Britain. Yes, there was opportunity. There was, people were needed to help restructure the economy, the transport system, and staff the National Health Service. But there were degrees of welcome and degrees of hostility. And I think that kind of cultural icon of the no blacks, no Irish, no dogs it is expressive of a broader socioeconomic truth that there was no shortage of racism in Britain in the post-war period.
To be honest, I knew it more. I think I knew it more from that photo of Phil Lynott or Phil Lynott from Tin Lizzy wearing a t-shirt that said "More blacks, more dogs, more Irish." On that note, I did one of my favorite interviews actually was with the former soldier who's from Belfast who served in the British Army. His name Glenn Bradley. He's from the Woodvale area, and he said that he was over while serving in the army with his other army friends, and they were in a pub somewhere in England. I can't remember where, and he was kicked out because the owner heard his accent, and
Mm.
the owner was like so anti-Irish. Now I don't think Glenn like mentioned that sign or anything, but yeah, definitely the sentiment was around there.
If I can mention one thing I did see at first hand, because I grew up in Birmingham, and obviously Birmingham was uniquely impacted by the Troubles because of the Birmingham pub bombings of November 1974. There was a park not far from my house, and somebody graffitied in very large letters on that, "Irish kill, rubber bullet stones." Now, I'd like to point out that's historically wrong. There were 16 people killed by rubber bullets in the Troubles, half of whom were children. And if you read the book Contact by a guy called Clark, who was former British Army, some of the squaddies used to doctor the rubber bullets with razor blades to enhance their destructive impact. So, I mean, but I suspect the person who did that graffiti wasn't really interested in that kind of historical nuance. But I think, yes, I certainly at first hand saw and experienced anti-Irish racism. Then no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, jury's out. I'd love to be the person who comes up with the historical proof. I recall as a teenager, you'd play football in the park and there'd be lads there who were of Afro-Caribbean descent, lads of Asian descent. There was, but I think Birmingham, by and large, managed its racial mix relatively harmoniously compared to some other cities. But yeah, look, if you wanted to live as an Irish person, there were whole suburbs of Birmingham like Balsall Heath, Sparkbrook, Sparkhill that had loads, that were heavily Irish. Now, we happen not to live in one of those because my father's bus garage, where he was based from, was Quinton on the south side of the city. So in our immediate streets, we were the only Irish family. And that proved to be quite the social drawback when the Troubles, moved into its mainland UK bombing phase.
On that note, actually, okay, so as the troubles as we know them kind of started to kick off, was there any was there any difference in like the atmosphere towards around Irish people or towards Irish people, or did it just start when the IRA came over to England and started their numerous bombings? Like,
I think it was the mainland campaign. I mean, in my novel One Small Step, I talk about this. The main character's conscious that there've been bombs in Guildford. And then there's a bomb in Coventry which kills one of the characters in the novel. And so there's that sense of encroachment that, somehow the conflict is getting closer to his world. Now, I play a little bit fast and loose with the history there, because there was an active IRA unit in Birmingham that had been detonating explosions in about the year and a half before the pub bombings, but they were smaller. I'm not seeking to excuse them, but they were smaller explosions at commercial premises. They tended to be a nuisance more than a catastrophe. But obviously, the whole mood music around Irishness and in Birmingham changed on 21st November 1974 when the pub bombings went off.
What age were you when when those bombs happened?
I was a 9-year-old child at primary school, and obviously you have the concerns of a 9-year-old child. You haven't really got into thinking about politics and history at the time, so there's just this bewildering change in mood and atmosphere and hostility. And suddenly, because we were the only Irish family in our immediate network of streets, I went to an Irish Catholic primary school where all the local kids just went to the local state school. And suddenly I'm wearing this uniform which marks me out as Irish. I mean, if I'd been walking down the road wearing a balaclava and waving a tricolour, I couldn't have been more obvious. But except, of course, as a 9-year-old kid, I just had no idea what I was walking into.
God above, do you remember like the first time having to deal with a person that you didn't know not liking you because of something you kind of can't control and something you didn't do? It must be an awful feeling to be on the other end of this kind of tribalism. Like,
It's more mystifying than it. I mean, I record it in One Small Step where the main character Danny's coming home and a couple of kids stop him, tell him all Irish is thick and punch him, which is what happened to me. But the point is then, that was the first thing, and it came out of nowhere to me, but it was just in the immediate aftermath of the bombings. And then you slowly realize, actually, it's not just the two lads who punched me. There's a whole bunch of people. There's a lot of people who just see me and see you know, Irish person equals. There was just this dreadful conflation of you were Irish, therefore, none of which had any basis in logic or reason. And the fact that it's children, you think, well, all they're doing is repeating what they're hearing at home about Irish people from their parents, which is repeating what the son and the male are saying about Irish people, which is repeating an historically embedded attitude towards Irish people, which is, I think, has been present in British culture since colonialism in Ireland began in the middle of the 12th century.